Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When Mark inherited his uncle's crumbling countryside house, he expected peace and DIY weekends, not a neighborhood war with a woman named Karen, fake land claims, police visits, and a courtroom showdown that would end in viral fame and barbecue justice. This is not your average land dispute. I never expected that inheriting a piece of land would lead me into a full-blown neighborhood soap opera. My name's Mark. I'm 42, an electrician by trade, and a man who enjoys peace, structure, and a good backyard project. When my Uncle Bill passed, he left me a small house and a plot of land in the countryside, a place that had been in our family for decades but stood empty and neglected for years. The roof was sagging, the weeds were waist-high, and the paint was peeling like sunburned skin. But to me, it was a canvas. I had plans. Maybe rent it out, maybe use it as a summer getaway for the family. Either way, this land was mine now, legally, officially, and sentimentally. So, on a sunny Saturday morning, I packed my tools, drove my van down the dusty road, and parked right in front of the gate. The fresh air smelled like overgrown grass and possibilities. I opened the old front door with the new keys, stepped inside, and let the memories of my uncle rush in. The floor creaked exactly as I remembered. I started working, clearing branches, sweeping the porch, fixing a broken step, when I heard the unmistakable sound of someone marching toward me like they owned the place. Enter Karen. Mid-50s, arms crossed, face locked in a permanent smirk. She stood on the other side of the fence like she was surveying her kingdom. "You need to leave," she said flatly. "This is our family's land." I blinked. "Excuse me," she huffed. "My father sold this land to my brother 10 years ago. You're trespassing." I tried to stay calm. "No, ma'am. I inherited this from my uncle. I have the deed, the will, and every document you can think of." She smiled like a cat who thought she'd caught a mouse. "Then they're fake. And I'm calling the cops." I watched Karen storm off like she was the sheriff of the county, practically marching in rhythm with her self-righteous indignation. I leaned against my van, heart beating a little faster, not because I was nervous. Hell, I knew I was in the right, but because the sheer absurdity of the situation was hard to wrap my head around. I had just started clearing vines off a porch swing, and now I was about to be reported for trespassing on my own property. Welcome to rural America, population madness. 15 minutes later, a patrol car rolled up the gravel road, kicking up a cloud of dust. 2 officers stepped out, one younger, trying too hard to look serious behind mirrored sunglasses, and the other older, with that weary look of someone who'd seen too many neighbor disputes end in flying garden gnomes. Karen ran up to them before they'd even shut the doors. "Officer," she barked, "that man is illegally occupying our family's land. My father sold it years ago. He's a squatter." The officers glanced at me. I raised a hand casually, like I was greeting delivery guys instead of potential escorts off my own property. I calmly handed over my folder. "Here are the deed, inheritance paperwork, notarized will, and county records. It's all legal. I inherited this land from my late uncle. I'm just here to clean it up." The older cop flipped through the documents, nodding slowly. "Looks solid to me." But Karen wasn't done. She leaned in, voice dripping with venom. "Those documents are forged. He probably found some old man's will online and typed his name in." I stifled a laugh. "Really? You think I forged an entire legal estate transfer? I'm an electrician, not a Bond villain." Karen's eyes widened with theatrical horror. "He's mocking the legal process." The younger officer tried to diffuse the growing tension. "Ma'am, this appears to be a civil matter. We can't force someone off land they have documentation for. You'd have to go through the courts." Karen's face turned scarlet. "I'll do just that. And don't think this is over. You'll be sorry." The officers gave me an apologetic look as they left. I just nodded, grateful for their professionalism. But as Karen stomped off, muttering legal threats and something about knowing a judge personally, I had the uneasy feeling this was only the beginning. 2 days later, I pulled up to my property with a thermos of coffee in one hand and a list of chores in the other, expecting a quiet day of power washing the siding and maybe patching up a few shingles. What I got instead was the twilight zone. The gate was wide open. That was the first red flag. The second was the sudden appearance of plastic patio furniture scattered across my front yard, 2 lawn chairs, a fold-out table, and, just to top off the absurdity, a pink flamingo lawn ornament. I slowed the van and stared. In the middle of the yard, a hand-painted wooden sign had been jammed into the ground. It read, "Property of the Johnson family, private family retreat. Trespassers will be reported." My jaw physically dropped. I stepped out of the van and walked slowly toward the house. My front door, the one I'd changed the lock on just last week, was shut, but something was off. The doorknob looked newer, shiny. Too shiny. I twisted it, locked. They'd changed my locks. For a full 5 seconds, I stood there frozen, brain trying to reboot. Then I saw movement inside the living room window. I peeked in and nearly dropped my coffee. Sitting comfortably on the couch, drinking soda and watching some mid-morning talk show, was a man I didn't recognize. His shoes were off. His wife, or partner I assumed, was curled up with a magazine. A third person, a middle-aged woman I'd seen shouting at a Chipotle once, Karen's sister perhaps, was doing yoga in my living room. I kid you not, downward dog, on my rug. I knocked on the door, calmly, firmly. The man came over and opened it like I was disturbing him at a Motel 6. "Can I help you?" "Yeah," I said, keeping my tone steady. "I'm Mark. I own this property. I'd like you to get out of my house." He blinked, clearly unbothered. "We're just checking on it for the family." "The family?" "Karen," he said. Like that explained everything. She said this was a family home. We're just helping her reclaim what's rightfully theirs. "You broke into a house. That's a felony." He shrugged. "Well," Karen said. I didn't let him finish. I backed away, took out my phone, and called the police. Within 20 minutes, the cavalry arrived. Same 2 officers. When they stepped onto the lawn and saw the makeshift Johnson family resort laid out in front of them, the older one muttered, "You've gotta be kidding me." The unauthorized tenants tried the same spiel. "Just caretakers. Misunderstanding. We thought it was ours." One of them even asked if they could just stay the weekend and finish their plans. I thought the cop's eyeball was going to roll out of his head. The police forced them out, though due to protocol, they were given 24 hours to collect their things and leave peacefully. No charges yet. Pending investigation. Apparently, law enforcement doesn't move quite as fast when it's not a clear-cut break-in with a crowbar, but I documented everything. Photos, names, times, license plates. I even saved the pink flamingo as Exhibit A. That evening, I had a locksmith come out again, second time in a week, and upgraded the locks to something that could survive a zombie apocalypse. I also installed motion-activated cameras, floodlights, and even a doorbell cam that sends video straight to my phone. You'd think I was guarding Fort Knox, but no, it was just Uncle Bill's dusty old house and a lawn now forever tainted by yoga. And yet, even with the invaders gone, I had a pit in my stomach. If they were bold enough to change the locks, what was next? Then the email arrived. Subject, Notice of Civil Action. Johnson versus Mark Weston Karen had officially taken me to court. She was suing to invalidate my ownership based on a verbal agreement her father allegedly made with my uncle. No documentation, no signatures, just good old Karen family folklore, now weaponized into a legal assault. I stared at the screen and muttered, "Oh, it's on." When that legal notice hit my inbox, I thought it was a joke. I kept checking for a "just kidding" line at the bottom, but no, Karen was dead serious. She had filed a civil suit claiming my ownership was invalid and that the land was rightfully hers based on what she called a legacy agreement. According to her filing, my uncle and her father had a mutual understanding over a decade ago to pass the land to her family, sealed apparently over coffee and pecan pie at some family cookout in 2011. There were no deeds, no contracts, just vibes. I forwarded the notice to my lawyer, Gina Bentley, a firecracker of a woman who had once prosecuted organized crime and now specialized in idiots with boundary issues. She reviewed the filing and just muttered, "This is either the dumbest lawsuit I've ever seen or the boldest attempt at legalized trespassing." Either way, we hit back. So we did. Gina filed a counterclaim that same week. It included unlawful entry and occupation, vandalism, tampering with private security systems, attempted property fraud, and most alarming of all, reckless endangerment. Why? Because during the second break-in, I'd found 3 rat traps laced with poison left behind in the attic crawlspace. One of them had snapped near where I was working. If my hand had been a few inches closer, bye-bye fingers. Karen's claim might have been ridiculous, but Gina didn't want to leave any room for sloppiness. She compiled everything: video footage, before and after photos, locksmith receipts, even a screenshot from the smart cam catching Karen's brother dragging a patio chair across my living room while singing along to Achy Breaky Heart. I'll admit, I started to lose sleep. Not because I thought I'd lose the case, but because of the sheer surrealism of it all. I hadn't just inherited a house, I had inherited a war. Karen and her crew weren't just stubborn, they were strategic. They filed motions to delay, sent letters to county officials alleging historical injustice, and even tried to argue that my uncle had been mentally incompetent at the time of signing his will. Gina handled it all like a seasoned shark in a sea of minnows. "Mark," she told me, "they're throwing cooked spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks. None of it will, but we're not just going to defend. We're going to end this." By the time our court date was locked in, Gina had expanded the suit. She added damages for emotional stress, property devaluation, security costs, and legal fees. Total, $200,000 in damages. Karen naturally filed a motion to dismiss. The judge denied it, with prejudice. The pretrial hearing was something out of a sitcom. Karen arrived in a white suit, like she was ready for a Hamptons brunch, flanked by her brother, her cousin, and someone who might have been her hairdresser. When the judge asked if she had any written evidence of the alleged verbal land agreement, she said, "No, but I have my truth." Even the stenographer let out a tiny laugh. When we left that day, Gina patted me on the back. "She's toast. All we have to do now is not blink." And I didn't. Not even when Karen walked past me and whispered, "Hope you like your little shack. It won't be yours for long." I smiled. Funny, that's exactly what I thought about your lawsuit. The courthouse didn't know what hit it. The day of the trial, I walked in wearing my best flannel and cleanest pair of jeans. My lawyer, Gina, insisted on something respectably blue-collar. Across the room sat Karen in a blazer, 3 sizes too confident, flipping through a binder that looked more like a church bulletin than a legal defense. Her brother was there too, fiddling with a Bluetooth earpiece like he was expecting to take a call from the Supreme Court. The judge, an older woman with a silver bun and glasses that could slice marble, called the room to order. As soon as opening statements began, I knew Karen had made a terrible mistake by representing herself with assistance from my family legal counsel, who, spoiler alert, was not a licensed attorney, just her cousin Doug, who once audited a business law class and now thought he was Saul Goodman. Karen began her argument by pulling out a blown-up photo of the property Google Earth style and claimed, "This land has always been spiritually part of our family." I saw Gina's eyes light up like Christmas. Spiritual ownership doesn't hold up in court. Then came their pièce de résistance, a crumpled, handwritten receipt, supposedly signed by her late father, stating he had agreed to let Bill Weston keep the land in trust until the Johnsons were ready to reclaim it. No witnesses, no date. The judge held it up like it was covered in something sticky and set it down with a look that said, "Seriously?" Gina took over like a freight train in high heels. She presented the original will, notarized and registered. Then the property title with a decades-long paper trail. She had video footage of the illegal entry, locksmith bills, security footage of Karen's brother trying to install curtains in my living room, and a veterinarian's bill because my dog had eaten part of the poison rat trap. Then Gina dropped the bombshell. She introduced a witness, Mr. Alvarez, a former employee of Karen's father, who testified under oath that no such deal was ever discussed. In fact, he recalled her father ranting about how he would never give the Westons a dime more than he had to. Gina smiled like a lioness and said, "So much for mutual understanding over pecan pie." But it wasn't over. Next, we got to cross-examine Karen, and wow. Under pressure, she crumbled like a Costco croissant. She admitted she never saw the alleged deal happen. She never paid for the property. She just assumed it was going to be theirs. And best of all, that she told her brother to change the locks before the paperwork got messy. Even the judge's eyebrows took flight. When the time came for the verdict, the courtroom was tense. I'd never been in a legal setting so absurd and yet so personal. That land wasn't just dirt and shingles. It was family, memory, legacy. The judge looked straight at Karen. "This court finds in favor of the defendant, Mark Weston. All claims by the plaintiff are dismissed with prejudice." Additionally, the court awards Mr. Weston $200,000 in compensatory damages for unlawful entry, emotional distress, property damage, and legal costs. Furthermore, a no-contact order is placed against Ms. Johnson and her named relatives. They must remain at least 5 acres away from the property at all times. Karen gasped like she'd been slapped with a fish. I exhaled. Gina squeezed my shoulder and whispered, "Told you not to blink." As we walked out, cameras were waiting. Local news had gotten wind of the case, calling it the Backyard Battle of County Road 18. I didn't say much, just one line. Sometimes the only way to deal with crazy is to beat it with facts. Karen didn't even make eye contact. Her brother was too busy arguing with a parking meter, but I saw it. The look in her eyes. Not just defeat, humiliation. You'd think after winning $200,000 and reclaiming your stolen property from a neighborhood vigilante squad, you'd feel some righteous hunger for revenge. But the truth is, I didn't want revenge. I wanted a cold beer, a working lock on my front door, and a Saturday without legal documents showing up in my mailbox like cursed postcards. The week after, the verdict was blissfully quiet. Karen and her crew vanished like a bad dream after sunrise. No more stomping over property lines, no mystery lawn chairs, no flamingos. Just me, the crickets, and a surprisingly loyal squirrel who'd taken to watching me build the new porch swing every afternoon. But still, I felt the need to commemorate the madness. Not with anger, not with lawsuits. With humor, with flair. So I went to a local print shop and ordered a large custom wooden sign, rustic finish, burnt lettering, and I proudly bolted it to the new fence I built right at the front of the property, facing the road for all to see. It read, "Yes, Karen, this is my land. No, I didn't steal it. Please enjoy the view from no closer than 5 acres." People noticed. I started getting honks from passing trucks. One guy literally pulled over, laughed for 2 minutes, and yelled out, "She had it coming!" Word spread, and within days, I started meeting the neighbors. Real neighbors, people who had been quietly watching this circus unfold from their porches with popcorn and secondhand embarrassment. Turns out, I wasn't Karen's first target. She had tried to write up a guy for having a too patriotic flagpole. She once called animal control on a family for owning a corgi that barked in British. These people weren't my enemies. They were survivors. So I did what any newly victorious landowner does. I threw a barbecue. Not just any barbecue. This was a full-on peace treaty with brisket. I printed invites and slid them under mailboxes with a note. No HOA, no drama, just burgers and beer. By noon on Saturday, my lawn was full of people. Folding chairs, lemonade coolers, homemade pies, and someone even brought a karaoke machine. One guy, Frank, came over with ribs so good I briefly considered proposing to him. His wife approved. We laughed. We swapped Karen stories. We toasted to property rights and peppered steaks. And at one point, a kid asked, "So who was Karen anyway?" Everyone burst out laughing. That was the moment I realized I'd officially buried the saga. Not in court filings or security footage, but in good food, good people, and that warm crackle of meat on the grill. I wasn't the man who almost lost his land anymore. I was the guy who fought, won, and then built a picnic table on top of his legal victory. Now, every time I walk past that wooden sign at the gate, I can't help but smirk. Not out of pettiness, out of pride. Because, yeah, maybe I didn't get revenge, but I got the neighborhood, and I got my land back. And, let's be honest, that's the best seasoning for barbecue there is. About a month after the barbecue, life had finally returned to something resembling normal. I was spending my weekends sanding porch railings, sipping coffee in the mornings with my feet up, and occasionally chuckling at the faded outline in the grass where Karen's Johnson family property sign once stood like a monument to delusion. Then one morning, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Hi, I'm a producer with HGTV. We heard about your story through a local affiliate. Would you be interested in sharing it on camera?" I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my screwdriver. I thought it was spam. I even replied, "Only if I get to keep the rights to the barbecue sauce recipe." They replied instantly, "Deal." Next thing I know, I'm standing on my front porch, mic clipped to my shirt, talking to a camera crew while they ask me to walk naturally down the path I built by hand. Naturally, I tripped on my own bootlace and muttered something that would need to be censored. The episode was part of a show about homeowners standing up against unfair HOAs and land disputes. The crew loved every detail, from the fake land claim to the rat trap to the infamous sign at the front gate. They even interviewed some of the neighbors, who proudly reenacted the barbecue like it was a historic reenactment of the Boston Tea Party. Frank brought ribs again. The segment aired 2 months later. It was titled Barbecue Justice, One Man, One Fence, One Karen Too Many. Apparently, it got pretty decent ratings. I got fan mail. One woman in Idaho sent me a crocheted potholder with the words "Respect the Deed" stitched in bold red thread. But the wildest moment came the day I went to the local hardware store and a cashier recognized me. "You're that guy from the land fight," he said. "You're a legend, man." Me? A legend. I used to be just a guy with a van full of tools and a dream of fixing up his uncle's old place. Now I was that guy, the one who stood his ground, kept his humor, and refused to get steamrolled by entitlement in a pastel blazer. The land is mine. The peace is back. And best of all, so is the grill. So if you ever find yourself face to face with a smug Karen who insists your house is hers because her cousin once mowed the lawn in 1994, remember this. Keep your paperwork tight, keep your sense of humor sharper, and when it's all over, throw one hell of a barbecue.